All right, now we can go to Sahar, who somehow right now has both his name and the TousiTV logo on top of him. Hang on, let me bring down the volume. So you're representing both channels. Hello, how are you? Welcome to the channel.
Thank you. My debut. Thank you so much for having me.
I know it's been we've been trying to get this sorted for a while. For those of you who are not familiar, we've got Sahar TV. Check out his channel. I'm sure a lot of you are already following him, but if you're not, then how dare you? So also, guys, if you thought that I've been pessimistic about this thing, go on, give us your thoughts, Sahar.
Oh my God, I'm incredibly pessimistic about this. If we haven't learned from history, this is going to be a big mess up. Of course, now everything seems promising. Trump signed a peace deal between Israel and Hamas, but if you actually look at the interviews between Hamas spokespeople, you can actually see that they say, we will not disarm. It's our right to have our weapons. So what do we expect? They also say openly that, and that's the funniest thing, they say, we can give them a ceasefire for 5 to 10 years, but then after 5 to 10 years, we will attack again. Sounds very familiar to what you're asking? The Treaty of Hudaybiyah of Muhammad. When Muhammad tried to impose a war on the Quraysh tribe, he said exactly the same thing. He wanted to give them peace for 9 years, 9 months, and 9 days. After 2 years, broke the ceasefire. Why? Because they were weak. The same thing is going to happen here. We are going to have another October 7th and another October 7th. And that's the problem I have with my government. We never learn from our mistakes.
But that's the thing. So a lot of the liberal left-wingers in the West always say Israel, the Israeli governments are always very ruthless, genocidal. But actually, you would say, and a lot of other people would say, we've been critical of a lot of Israeli prime ministers or Israeli governments for being weak and for conceding too much and making concessions. You've seen in the 2000s, in the 90s, basically every few years, right? So yeah, what would you say about that?
So listen. I mean, the only way to, and I really hope that this would happen, and that's my criticism, my biggest criticism of Benjamin Netanyahu, and I know that there was a lot of international pressure. We had 30% left to finish. We had the last stronghold of Hamas, and we should have kicked, I don't know if I can curse, I'm not going to curse. We should have done exactly we should have eradicated that terrorist organization. They did not surrender. Just pay attention, they did not surrender. As soon as it ended, what did they chant down the streets? Khaybar, Khaybar, ya Yahud, to the Jews. Remember what the army of Muhammad did to you in Khaybar. We will do the same to you. If you don't know, they beheaded the men, they raped the women, and did horrific things to the children as well. So I think that is my biggest pet peeve with the Israeli government. And I love the Israeli government. Yeah, I have some criticism against it, but we have to remember that if Israel would have ended this, it wouldn't have been a band-aid. We would have finally finished the war despite international criticism.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. At the same time, you've had this situation with the last few hours. Well, the last couple of days, we've had so many ups and downs. Hamas saying, we'll disarm. And then, no, we didn't say we're going to disarm. Over the last couple of hours, we got confirmation that Hamas are only releasing 4 dead bodies out of 28. Apparently, they've lost them. Now, this could be, what do you think? This could either be mind games, or it could genuinely be the fact that the Hamas members who were looking after the dead bodies, they're dead now. They got killed by the IDF. What is your instinct saying? Do they have the dead bodies?
Wow. Coming from Hamas, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, knowing this organization, how can you trust them? I think they do have most of the bodies. It does make sense that they lost most of them because remember, they've been holding dead bodies since October 7th. That's 2 years. Just imagine, try to think where you put this body and probably the smell, they probably buried some of it and then they had to dig. I don't actually know. I just know that this is a ruthless terrorist organization that cannot be trusted. And of course, they're playing mind games, and they've been playing mind games since the beginning of this negotiations. They said that they will not surrender, and they said that they will surrender, and that's a matter of stage 2 or then stage 3. So come on, guys. Don't be ignorant. Don't be blind to the reality. Hamas is coming back and is coming back strong.
But that's the thing. So my instinct was the last couple of days, even today, Hamas have been going around hunting down the other rivals and tribes in Gaza. And my instinct says what they want to do is basically wipe out any other competitor so that when the new committee says, oh, so we're going to have a Palestinian body in Gaza, they could say, oh, we don't really have Hamas anymore as a flag, but we can do the job if you want, because there's nobody else left, right?
That is exactly what I thought, and that's a great point that you just brought. If they're truly planning to disarm, then why try to eradicate the other groups, the other gangs that are there? You're showing no intention in leaving the Gaza Strip or leaving politics. So why are you killing your competitors? Great point. Great point.
Yeah.
That proves exactly that Hamas's intentions are to stay.
Also, we have Keir Starmer now on the screen with President Trump. I don't think he wasn't even invited; he just turned up. But the British government yesterday took credit for this peace deal. What is your opinion? Because the Australians and the Americans laughed the whole time.
I mean, listen, the moment Keir Starmer recognized Palestine as a state after the biggest massacre against the Jews since the Holocaust, I mean, there's other reasons why he's not credible to me, but according to my instincts, it feels like there's a lot of incentives coming from Qatar, a lot of incentives. So Keir Starmer can say whatever he wants. We all know who's actually in charge of this, which is President Donald J. Trump. Of course, the pressure of Benjamin Netanyahu with the IDF in the Gaza Strip. If you would not, and by the way, I don't think it's a good deal. I do think that it's amazing that the hostages are back. It is not a good deal because those 250 terrorists that are serving life are going to be committing terror attacks again and again and again. And my family could be next. My family could be next. So no, Keir Starmer, get the hell out. Nobody needs you.
Now, speaking of Keir Starmer and talented people, tell us about, for those who are not familiar, how did you start your channel? What made you start that channel? And the format of the channel that you have is absolutely insane. The idea that you had, obviously, tell people, in case they don't know you, what you do on the channel.
Are you talking specifically about the reaction videos, or are you talking about the debates?
Actually, we prefer both, but the funny bit is the reaction stuff. Obviously, it's quite funny, but the debates are also actually, to be fair, the debates made you who you are. I think the branding is you just basically. It's not really just being defensive and defending the position, but you actually expose the other side, but not saying much. You just nod, and then they just dig their own hole. So tell people how you do your channel, what made you start it, and what you do.
So I started this on October 7th. I got a phone call from my sister, and she told me about everything that happened. I really couldn't believe it. But the first place I went to was social media. I went to TikTok. And then I started joining TikTok lives, and I realized that people were talking absolute BS about the situation. They said that the concert never happened, that the Nova Festival is a made-up thing. And then I was like, okay, well, I need to give them some rebuttal. So I joined, and I started going on TikTok lives, and very quickly I started realizing that this was an echo chamber. I kept getting muted, kept getting banned, kept getting doxxed. And I realized what would be the best way for me to contribute to the Jewish people around the world, to the Western world, because this is not about Hamas and Israel. It's about Islam versus the West. I realized this very, very quickly. So I started having one-on-one conversations. I started posting those conversations. And very slowly I started getting messages from people in the UK, people in Germany, people in France telling me, listen, I used to go to Hamas, to pro-Hamas protests in the United Kingdom. The only reason why I changed my mind is because you were very respectful to the other side, despite the fact that they cursed your mother, despite the fact that they cursed your wife. You were very respectful. You were giving them an opportunity to engage in a peaceful conversation. But we realized that the other side is not willing to talk. They don't care about the well-being of the West. They don't care about the well-being of the Jews. Many messages just like this started pouring in, and I was like, wow, I'm actually making a difference. So I kept expanding and expanding and expanding, and almost 2 years after, I think we have passed more than 300 million views on all social media platforms. It's actually exploding. People love hearing those conversations, and more opportunities are coming in. And then the commentary just came along, I think inspired based on people like you who are doing commentary exactly the same way that I was inspired to do. And I think that this is the best way to transfer this information. Watching an engaging video with an engaging person is the best way to change people's mind. So I thank you for that, because you're an inspiration, brother.
I appreciate it. Thank you. And then you've done really well. 300 million views. That's almost as many of the humanitarian aid that was stolen by Hamas in a week. So that's good, impressive work. So I love how President Trump right now, this whole peace summit is basically just his show. He's just standing there like a celebrity, and they're just taking pictures with him. I think this is just a Trump show. He doesn't really care about what happened after.
Can I ask you why you're optimistic about this as well?
Oh, I'm not optimistic. No, I'm actually pessimistic. Yeah. So, well, the reality is, my fear is not some sort of imminent threats, fallout. It will be that a more medium, long term, as you said, that we're just going to go back to square one. My problem with this is that it doesn't solve the main issue. And there are two main issues. One is, you might say, well, it's the threat of Islamism. It's still there. Radicalization is still there. No, but that's not my main issue. There's a complicated situation, because the aim of the international community is to eventually create some sort of Palestinian entity, right? Some sort of Palestinian state. They keep pushing it. You just made it more complicated. You have Gaza now. Then you got Judea and Samaria, or the West Bank. Are you going to keep them together? You just made everything more complicated by giving Gaza its autonomy. If Gaza was what President Trump proposed initially, months ago, which was basically the US will take over and they will have a fully demilitarized non-entity. Hypothetically, I hate the United Nations, but something like the United Nations will run it. That would have been okay. But it's still going to be Palestinian. That makes it complicated for the future so-called Palestinian state. You haven't solved the two-state solution nonsense that you guys are all obsessed with in the international community. That's my biggest problem. Not just the Hamas terrorists, and actually the kids in Gaza who today are walking around with guns, celebrating. That's a whole different problem, as you said. But there's a geopolitical problem that is not going to be resolved when it comes to Palestinian state, as they call it. What do you think?
So for the people who don't know, a peace deal, a two-state solution, has been offered in numerous cases. It was offered in 1937, which they rejected. It was offered in 1947, which was rejected. It was offered in 1967, which was rejected. It was offered in the Oslo Accords in 1993 and 1995, and in the year 2000, in the year 2005 when we pulled out of Gaza, and in the year 2008. Every single time it was rejected. Why? Because the leaders know that it's going to be a suicide mission to admit that Israel is a Jewish state. So they don't care about Gaza. They don't care about Judea and Samaria. They care min maye el maye, from water to water. Palestine Arabiya. Jews are not Arab. What will happen to us? That chant on its own is genocidal. It calls for the ethnic cleansing of Jews. So you need to understand. I get you. It doesn't make sense. Is Gaza Palestine? Is Judea and Samaria Palestine? Are they going to be connected somehow, dividing the Jewish state? It's not very clear. Again, it seems like a very joyful time, but just remember, right? Just remember, at the end of this, we will see the dust settles, and we will see that this whole thing was a shtick. That is my opinion.
Well, a couple of things. You mentioned, rightly so, that the two-state solution was offered many times and it was rejected, because that means they have to accept Israel is real. But I could also make an argument that we actually did, for a short period of time, have a two-state solution between 2005 and 2023, because Gaza was given to the Palestinians. Israel pulled out. You had your own autonomy. You had your own government. So we did experiment with the two-state solution. What did they do? Start building tunnels and doing schools with the United Nations to brainwash kids, and eventually Yahya Sinwar could throw a stick at the drone. That's basically what they did, right? That's the ending of the story. How did that go?
In 2005, Israel completely withdrew from Gaza, digging out the graves of Israeli casualties that were buried inside Gaza, because they knew exactly what the Gazans were going to do. In the year 2007, Hamas was elected by force. They threw out Fatah members from the roofs, dragged them down the streets. And in the year 2008, right, 1 year after Israel started the blockade, and Egypt started as well, the blockade, they started firing rockets. If this was about an occupation that's been going on for 20 years, then why did they fire rockets in 2008 and in 2009? And pretty much every single year until the end, because they don't care. It's about the eradication of Jews. And then if you're making the argument, yes, it is about the occupation, why wasn't a single rocket being fired into Egypt? Is it because they're
yeah.
Muslim? Do you have something against Jews only? Probably.
By the way, speaking of the Palestinian leadership, we got Mr. Potato Head, Mahmoud Abbas, over there. Do you think he's the future? Do you there is hope. There is hope. We got Mahmoud Abbas. Come on.
Every person that advocates for the pay for slay policy, which, if you don't know what it is, you pay Palestinians to go and commit terror attacks in Israel, and then you reward them by naming streets after them and rewarding the family and commemorating them. These types of people do not deserve to run this. By the way, there's a really good proposal by Dr. Mordechai Kedar. I don't know if you want to hear, but it's a great one. He believes that the only way for Palestinians to have self-governing is based on ancient times. He believes that the reason why Saudi Arabia and why the UAE are successful is because of their tribal structure. The reason why Iraq is not successful, and by the way, they have just as much oil as the UAE, is because they don't have any homogeny between the groups. If you actually divide the Palestinian cities, such as Ramallah and Jenin and Hebron, according to their tribal families, and they're going to run Palestinian city-states, that's going to promise peace, because now there's not that religious aspect. There's that family aspect. And if one family messes up, the entire emirate gets compromised. That is the best solution that I've heard so far.
It is. By the way, I just noticed, why on earth is the president of FIFA in the middle of this peace summit? Trump is just inviting anyone he knows now, because obviously the FIFA World Cup is going to be in the US. So it's like, well, we're going to have peace. We got the world. Let's bring on FIFA, one of the second most corrupt organization after the United Nations. So we now have a family photo. But the payments and the naming streets, that was also a long strategy that was also created and helped by Khomeini, the first supreme leader, before he became supreme leader, because obviously all his life he was the one. After the muftis and those guys in the 30s and 20s in Palestine, that it was people like Khomeini that basically created the modern ideology of how Shia Islam could help the Islamic Caliphate that they want. Obviously, Hezbollah was created, and even Hamas was helped. This tactic of naming streets and all this nonsense is a big thing in Iran. Every street is after some sort of martyr. So many streets. Yeah, it's insane.
What would you say to people who claim that the IRGC or the government of Iran does not represent Islam because they're Shia? What would you say to people like that?
Well, obviously, Islam is not real, but if we say from a perspective of Islam, it's something, right? As an ideology, technically speaking, yes. I mean, the Shias would be considered as the Green Party. I think nobody cares. Or in the UK, the Liberal Democrats. It's the wing of Islam that there's a reason they're the minority, but because they love victimhood, and but they think they're superior. Technically speaking, you can make an argument that they are close. They're closest to Muhammad's line because it was supposed to be based on bloodline. But actually, the Sunnis are correct because even Muhammad never said, after my death, it has to be my nephew or my cousin. So technically, the Shias are fake. But both sides still carry the fundamental values anyway, and the ideology. Even closer than Catholics versus Protestants. So the Shia and the Sunnis, they have some differences in terms of how they stand to pray or where do they put their arm. They got technical differences, but actually they both still believe in the same level of jihad, same level of marrying 6-year-olds and all that stuff. So equality. Anyway, so okay, these guys are now going to go into the room to start the session. Thank you so much, Sahar, for joining, and we will have you more on the channel. Obviously, we'll give you a shout out more as well. There's going to be a lot coming from Sahar. I have a plan. I'm going to basically try and kidnap him for our future project. I can't say kidnap to a Jew. Gonna kidnap him. We're gonna kidnap him. Yeah, we have big projects coming up on TousiTV and obviously with the new media world, and we're gonna have Sarah's help as well. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming on the channel.
Thank you.
Cheers, mate.